Welcome back to Sportz Blitz Live. Luke Robinson here. Sorry about the mic problems a little bit earlier. We're getting that fixed right now. With me right now, we have Mark Snyder from the Detroit Free Press. He's here to talk a little Michigan football, as Michigan and Alabama, of course, will be going head-to-head in Dallas this weekend. How you doing tonight, Mark?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Hey, doing fantastic. Thanks so much for being with us. I hope you guys up in Michigan are just as excited about this game as we are.
Yeah, I think it's unique to have an opening game like this. I think a lot of times, these teams schedule some cream puffs, and I think to have a big opponent like this is exciting on both sides.
Well, that's a great lead-in because you're right. I think a lot of times the SEC and the Big Ten have notoriously scheduled some cream puffs to begin the season. Now, Alabama's been the exception to the rule here the last couple of years, but I know for well over a decade, Alabama would always have a pretty pasty white non-conference schedule, and I always wanted them to play somebody more difficult like a Michigan. But how are Michigan fans looking at this game? Are they looking at this as a statement game for the Big Ten to take on the mighty SEC?
I don't think that this is a conference thing. I think it's an individual team thing. I think they understand that Alabama is the defending champs. And, you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. And they did pretty well last year, but they know there's another level to climb. They want to win the Big Ten championship, and this is a good start to showing that they're worthy of being on that level.
Okay, and Mark, let's talk a little bit about Fitz Toussaint, who is the running back. Now, I know there was some talk about his being suspended possibly for this game. What do you think his status will be for Saturday?
I don't know. I think that he had a court hearing today, and he had a plea bargain. So I think the court thing is out of the way. I think it's a question just of Brady Hoke and the internal discipline. Obviously, he had a drunk driving arrest on July 21st, and he's dealt with internal consequences since then. He was suspended for the first week of practice, and now it's a question of just dealing with the next levels and what he has to do. We don't know what the internal discipline is, so we don't know what consequences he has to meet. So we don't know really what Brady Hoke's going to determine in terms of whether he's going to play. But if he doesn't play, they've got a number of backs who can fill in. Maybe not as proven as him, but maybe with similar talent.
How relieved are Michigan fans to have a coach like Brady Hoke versus a coach like Rich Rodriguez?
Well, I think they're relieved that they're winning. I mean, obviously, Rich Rodriguez, the biggest thing he didn't do was win. Obviously the NCAA violations were disappointing to all of them because it was embarrassing. There were other issues in terms of things he said that didn't go over so well with some of the alums. But the idea was that they weren't winning. And at Michigan, when you win for 40 years, as Alabama knows, and then all of a sudden, there's going to be hell to pay for someone, and I think that Rodriguez is the one who caught the short end of that. And I think there wasn't any tie to him, personal tie, based on Michigan history. So I think it was easy, or relatively easy, for people to say goodbye to him and say, get someone in here we've heard of.
Aside the obvious answer of Denard Robinson and his mobility versus the speed of the Alabama defense, what do you see as a key to this game?
I know it's obvious, but it really is a big deal because the way I think to beat Alabama is going to be with big plays, and that doesn't happen very often. But you're not going to beat them, just grinding out yards over the course of the game. They're just too tough, even with the turnover that they've had on defense. So Robinson's going to play a big role with the passing game and his feet if he can break a big run or two. That's Michigan's best way to win this game. In terms of other matchups, it'll be interesting. Michigan has a pretty experienced secondary, and I think Alabama, their receivers are, relatively inexperienced. So I think that's maybe an area that they can try to. It could be a matchup in Michigan's favor. For the most part, it's going to be on the line. It's going to be Alabama's outstanding offensive line against Michigan's unproven defensive line. So if Michigan can, play that to a draw, then it'd be pretty impressive.
Well, along those lines, Michigan apparently, I've read some practice reports where they are beefing up. They're making some moves to beef up that defensive line, are they not?
Yeah, that was a decision that they made last week, that they were going to originally they had planned this to be a speedy line, and maybe it'll be that for most of the year. But against Alabama, with their size up front, they had to make some changes. So they took, another guy who was going to be a backup at nose tackle and brought him into the starting lineup named Clinton Washington. So now they'll have 2 300-pounders in the middle, and then they'll have a couple guys who are like 280 on the outside, which really gives them a lot more girth to really handle what they have to deal with Alabama's front line.
Well, Mark, I don't guess I could talk you into a prediction, could I?
Well, I don't know. I think that Alabama is going to win the game. I think that it's just a case where Alabama has a lot of talent in a lot of places, and they have a little more experience than Michigan too. Michigan doesn't have a lot of depth, and that may be more something that shows me over the course of the season. But I think that Alabama really is going to be able to win the line of scrimmage, and that's where this game is going to be won, because Michigan still is coming together there. They changed a lot of their offensive line, they changed a lot of their defensive line, and if they're outstanding in the first game, that'd be pretty impressive, because those things take some time to gel and be cohesive, and I think that that's something that maybe by the Big Ten season they'll be ready to go. But at this point, there's still too many question marks for the first game.
Well, Mark, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Best of luck to the Wolverines the rest of the way, after Saturday at least, and best of luck to the Detroit Lions and Detroit Tigers and everybody up there.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
All right, have a good day, bud. That was Mark Snyder with the Detroit Free Press. We certainly do appreciate his being with us. We'll be back in just a minute with more Sportz Blitz Live.